We are walking into an emergency. Clearly, I have my emergency hat on. A housing emergency specifically has been talked about now by Donald J. Trump, our president, and his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Now, here is what you need to know. What is a housing emergency and what is it actually going to be? What are they going to address? Secondly, what are the topics? What are the subject matter? What are the niches within the housing market they think need the most fixing? And third, what are the actual solutions that could fix the housing market? Just in a little bit of hyperbole we'll play at the end. So let's walk into this article discussing Trump may actually declare a national housing emergency. Scrolling down, we'll see that President Trump is indeed looking to declare this national housing emergency this fall, said Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. This would tee up housing affordability as a key issue ahead of the 2026 midterm elections, yay politics, which appear to be top of mind for the Trump administration as redistricting flights play out in several states. That's getting into the whole zoning of voting. That's a completely different zoning. We may declare a national housing emergency in the fall, Bessent said to the Washington Examiner on Monday. We're trying to figure out what we can do, and we don't want to step into the business of states, counties, and municipal governments. I think everything is on the table. So what is a national emergency? Well, just like if your state were to go into an emergency because there's snow, it basically gives more control to the top to shift how things normally operate in a once-in-a-lifetime or seemingly perilous situation. So let's bring back up that article to describe exactly what the emergency is. Under the 1976 National Emergencies Act, the president can declare a national emergency at his discretion. The act does not provide an explicit definition of what constitutes as emergency, but it does require the president to issue a formal declaration, such as, though, an executive order, not a tweet, and cite the statutory powers he plans to use in that declaration. Now, it goes on to say that there's about 137 different types of powers and things that they can do, from crime to health to different emergencies, and housing is one of them. So what is actually going to happen from this is talked about in the next article. Let's move on over to that one, because there's not a lot of information about this. The main section, it's actually the next article. I think I had them backwards. There's not a ton of information because right here we have from Newsweek, this is Joel Berner, a senior economist at Realtor.com. He says it remains unclear exactly what kind of emergency measures the administration could take to address housing. So let's walk through, bringing up our beautiful Canva, what exactly we are walking into, what a national housing emergency is, and what problems we currently face in the housing market. Let's walk through our first problem under those beautiful flags. What a beautiful flag. We have zoning. We talked about voting zoning, Texas, California, going through a lot of discussion around how they should section their districts. But zoning for housing, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, has pretty much been set in stone since 1970. The first zoning in our nation's real estate was found in or around the 20s. This is when we started to say, you can only build this here. Zoning, just to put plainly, is a label of what you can actually do with the property. You can have residential zoning. You can have multifamily zoning. I live on a mid-residential zoning area. I have middle recreation, which technically means, you can look it up, I can put a golf course on my property if I would like to. It's written in my zoning. I only have 0.6 acres, so I cannot do that as much as I would love to. I'm still trying to sell my wife on a little part 3. It's in my zoning. I can do it. I can have up to 6 chickens. I can even have a horse. A lot of things I don't have room for, but what I can and cannot do, what I can and cannot operate, what I can and cannot have is actually listed in the zoning. It gets much more specific when we're talking about commercial zoning and we're talking about industrial versus we're building a hotel versus we're building a recreational soccer facility. All different types of zoning. What I want to focus on with you, though, is the main issue, and it's single-family zoning. Now, at this moment, as we sit in America, we have enough current homes to facilitate housing and sheltering most all of the population. We're only a couple million homes off. We're not severely behind the 8 ball. Where we are severely behind is being able to build the right type of homes. Hear me. If in 1970, was it 1974 or 1976, Sean, could you look it up, the Fair Credit Housing Act? It was one of those 2 years where we came together as a country and said, you know what? We need to stop letting banks discriminate against people of color and gender. And so starting in that year, people were no longer allowed to discriminate at banks. It was 1968. My apologies, 1968. You were no longer allowed. No, that was the Civil Rights Act. This was to do specifically with credit. Look up the Fair Credit Act. That was Fair Credit, or Fair Housing Act, said you couldn't discriminate when someone's looking to buy or sell. In 1971 was when most all of the zoning was put in place in our country. So we decided pretty much what was going to be able to be done, follow me, on all of our land. All of America's land, they said, we can build this here, we can build that here, we're going to spread in some hotels there, multi-zone here, we can have a business go there, industrial there. When they made that map, people of color couldn't even get a mortgage. A woman couldn't walk into a bank as an independent earner or even as a wife of another earner and guarantee that they were going to be able to retrieve financing. So this led to, obviously, some racial implications into our zoning. It led to deeper disparity as we started to build single-family homes in areas that we only wanted specific people that could afford single-family homes, if you catch my drift. And we did that by making 75% of our entire country single-family zoning. We're going to get into some solutions for zoning and how this national emergency may address it. Let's get back into our beautiful Canva, because those beautiful flags all have problems. The second problem that we're going to walk through, though, is building. See, a lot of people, when they think about housing and they think about affordability, get a very quick and easy response. Build more homes. We need to build more homes. So let's see if we're building more homes. Because in the home building sector, we know that new construction is key. So let's walk through some graphs real quick. I actually want to bring up our housing affordability tracker real fast. This is our Trump tracker. We've been tracking Donald Trump's administration and everything to do with housing as far as affordability, supply, even the cost of living in a home. But here I want us to go down to new construction for sale. And if you click on any of these, and this link for this document is in the description, you will find new construction homes for sale by stage of construction. This is linked to every single number in the document. Not one number doesn't come with a source. This source shows us that we actually dropped in we dropped in new construction housing inventory. This is the first time this has happened in years. We've been going since the end of 2022 in a positive direction in inventory going high, and the only way a price can die is if supply is high. So people have been cheering along new construction to keep going along, but it finally started to go, whew. So what I was curious about is what new construction was actually starting to drop. Is it homes that are sitting on the market waiting to be sold? Or is it new construction plans? Because what you may not know, I have 8 years in the real estate industry, going on 9. I can tell you right now, most all the inventory, I'm using quotations for those listening, inventory, a lot of it is floor plans and blueprints of homes that may be in the future. Okay? You can go on Realtor right now, look up homes for sale in my area, click the new construction tab, and then look at how many of the homes look like they were AI or generated on some type of computer. You'll find that a lot are. And that's because they're floor plans. They're not ready, they're not built, and if you were to go out to the land, it's probably dirt and or grass. So I was curious, and I wanted to walk through all of the numbers. So let's bring up those other graphs that we'd already had pulled up. Now, this is total, but if we go over to the next one, because this is 499,000, we'll see new construction that isn't started yet. These are those floor plans and blueprints. What do you notice if you want to hide? If you click on the graph and you actually scroll, you can zoom in on that section of the graph. Can you click from 2020? You have to click on the graph. I'm asking Sean to do things that I've never asked you to do. I'm so sorry, Sean. So if you click it and then drag, it'll zoom in on that specific zone. Perfect. All the way to 2025. Amazing. Perfect. Big shout out to Sean. Did something I had never taught him how to do. I'm a graph nerd. So if we look at this, and it actually doesn't show it on this version when it's all zoomed in. Can you go back to the other version? I'm so sorry. Just go to the top and hit max. Okay. So what do we notice at the very end? It starts to peak up. It's starting to peak up. We may want to zoom back just ever so slightly, like control and scroll back. Perfect. This is a technical issue, and it is my fault. I take full responsibility. But this is homes that are floor plans, and it's peaking up. In a month where we saw a drop in new construction total, we saw an increase in floor plans. That told me something immediately. And if you're savvy in the financial space, it may tell you something immediately, that maybe we're seeing a decrease in one of the other phases of construction. And I think you're right. Let's go on to the next one, and we'll see that these homes are what's under construction right now. Go all the way to that end, and you'll see 2025 June, we saw a decrease. In fact, we've been seeing a decrease all the way since February of 2025 of homes that are physically being built. Now, this has a lot to do with labor market, has a lot to do with supply, softwood lumber, steel, appliances, concrete, wires, cabinets. All of these items have impending tariffs attached to them, and that means impending higher prices. We're seeing it right here in the graphs that potentially builders are slowing down their building pace. We can't assume that it's due to finances, but we are starting to see a trend that's aligning with new construction companies marketing their builds while simultaneously not building more homes. That, to me, spells new construction companies desperate for sales. Let's go ahead and go back to the Canva. I know we had another graph. Let's look at problem number 3. Behind the big, beautiful flag, number 3, financing. So if we go back to our housing affordability tracker, we're going to see that we track affordability in one of our key 3 metrics. If you could highlight that real quick, Sean, the affordability metric over there is currently at a 36. You may not be able to. It might pop stuff up. It's at a 36.49. When Donald Trump, for some perspective, this is an index we created based off of interest rates, median household income, price of a starter home, the first-time homebuyer affordability index brought to us by the National Association of Realtors, and the composite housing affordability index brought to us by the National Association of Realtors. Combined with all of that, we created this index to monitor and measure the affordability of our housing market, because honestly, I was just tired of reading headlines. So it's at a 36.4. This number was at 41.2 when his term began. So this number is dropping. What does that mean? It means affordability in our housing market is getting worse. It's not getting better, statistically speaking, numbers speaking. So if we can go back over to first-time homebuyer affordability on the left-hand side, we'll see that the first-time homebuyer affordability index actually shows us a very easy way to show that buying a home today is not nearly as easy as it was in yesteryears. Can we click on that first-time homebuyer affordability index? Sweet. Bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. Zoomer in, yeah. So this is a really easy table. It doesn't even look official. It looks like I made it. I promise I didn't. This is on the National Association of Realtors website. You can find it if you type in first-time homebuyer affordability index. That's not up there, but index. So if we zoom in a little, we can see in 2025, quarter 2, that's now, the starter home price in America is at an all-time high, $365,000 for a starter home in America. Let that sink in. I don't know if it's a vanity with some storage type sink or if it's like a standalone sink. Let that sink in. It's chilly outside. Bring him in. You got to let that sink in. 365 dinero to get a starter home. We're talking townhome. We're talking ranch with 2 beds. We're talking just bare minimum. Bare minimum. All while the same person looking at that $365,000 home also has to eye down a $2,500 potential rental market. So they're like, what do I do? And that's where we're facing crisis. Is the first-time home buyer needs to make way more than they have. Go back to that table for me real quick, Sean. We'll see it actually brought in numbers. I love the numbers to these. We don't have to rely on emotion. We can rely on data. If we look at a $365,000 home, the median starter home on today's market, if you were to put a 10% down payment down on it, this is what it assumes. Getting that 6.5%, 6.8% right now, or at the time of the quarter end, it's a little lower now. Interest rate. Your mortgage payment without taxes, without insurance, is $2,250. $2,212. It would be about $2,600 with those 2 things involved. But here's where the real sink has to be let in. He's banging on the door. Qualifying income. Hear me, please, wherever you be. Listen to this stat. The qualifying income for a person trying to get a starter home, the income that they make is $68,559. That's actually higher than it's ever been. That's the highest prime first-time home buyer median income I've ever seen on this graph. I've been watching it for years. Another number, though, that's creeping up to a near all-time high, only $270 less than its previous all-time high set in 2024 quarter two. The qualifying income to get into a home for a first-time buyer that makes $68,000 is $106,176. You need to make $106,000 not to get into a house. I love that you zoomed in. We should just not to just get into a house, to get your first house, to get started. Do you think they call it starter home because it's their third home? Do you think it says prime first-time homebuyer income? They're using Tom and Susie that have 4 homes and 6 retirement accounts? No. They're looking at the first-time buyer, someone who does not own real estate, someone who does not own land, does not own dirt, does not have a house. And they're saying, what does that person make? And then they're saying, okay, well, what's the home on the market for them? Okay, let's do some math. How much do they need to make versus what they actually make? And they create this index, and that index is at near all-time lows for both the non-owner and the owner. The person that even owns real estate is having a harder time affording this market. So as we're looking at a national housing emergency, I agree we should be having this conversation. I've been yelling about housing affordability since the beginning of 2023. I'm actually frustrated we're just now beginning to realize we are in an emergency state for housing. I'm wearing the emergency hat, for gosh sakes. We know where we are. We've been talking about this. If you've been following me on TikTok or Instagram, you know, whether it's a skit, whether it's an article, whether it's a breakdown of a political rant for 10 minutes, we know housing is in crisis mode. Zero dark 30. And so is Donald Trump, is Scott Bessent actually going to put out a plan that's going to create results? I'm going to give you a flat answer, and then I'm going to go deep. The flat answer is no. And here's why I say no. Because I think they're only going to attack a certain segment of the problem. One of the 3 key problems I think need to be addressed. And we've already laid out the 3 main problems. Affordability, we can go back to that Canva. Financing, and zoning. So how is it that we can fix these 3 problems in America? Well, that means we have to go into some solutions. Now, I think, again, based off what they've said, which hasn't been much, they're going to try to attack zoning. They are going to try to restructure local and municipal laws. Bessent did say that he doesn't want to mangle with local jurisdictions, but it may be something they start to talk about at a federal level to start shifting zoning regulations. Cool. They also talk about regulations for builders to be able to maybe build a little bit more. Maybe. Cool. But let's go through 3 potential solutions, I think. Let's expound on 3 solutions, I think, from listening to very smart people, very good economists, very well-renowned just housing pundits. They do exist, I promise. I've been searching them out for years. I found them. I follow them. My For You page is very curated, especially on Twitter, X. These are, I think, the 3 most potent potential solutions to the 3 most prominent problems. So let's start with our first most prominent problem. It was zoning. I think we should restructure zoning laws. I think if we go back in time, we can find that zoning laws are inherently income and racially discriminatory. They focus areas of where they want wealth and they want prosperity with single-family zoning. Multifamily zoning only really appears usually in downtown segments. I believe, and I'm going to show you an article here in a moment, that there are some solutions that revolve around proper placement of these multifamily homes and units, as well as a proper distribution of how we should view single-family zoning moving forward. I read this article, and I got to be honest with you before I bring it up. I read it. I agreed with the entire synopsis of the problem, and we're going to pop in on one of the solutions she has for the problem. We kind of already walked through a lot of the problem, single-family zoning. And so her first solution was removing single-family zoning altogether. Get rid of it. If it already exists, that's fine. But all remaining dirt, no. And it's at first something I read, I got to be honest, I thought to myself, okay, do we have enough homes in America right now to supply the buyers? Okay, do we have between properties that are vacant, property that are owned by investors, is there enough inventory out there that will eventually circulate to the market for sale that would support the market if we stopped building single-family homes? I dug really deep, and I got to be honest, I think she's right. I want to read you her entire recommendation. I think it's very smart. I've linked the article in the description. Give me your take in the comments of what you think. I'm going to read this all the way through. Approximately 75% of land in America is constrained by zoning practices that exclusively permit single-family residences. The restrictive zoning limits that variety of buildings that can be constructed hinders the ability of low-income families to live in resource-rich neighborhoods. Eliminating single-family zoning helps encourage affordable development in areas long restricted to low-income families. By eliminating single-family zoning, developers gain the flexibility to build inherently more affordable housing type townhomes, duplexes, or even apartment buildings, building up, thus diversifying the housing stock. In some areas, upzoning has resulted in immediate changes and increased new housing production. Local governments are increasingly recognizing the restrictive zoning and outdated land use regulations can suppress housing supply, drive up housing costs, and widen racial and economic disparities. We talked about that. Making the move forward, more inclusive zoning policies would be a step in the right direction. Nevertheless, challenges remain, as some opponents believe developers may be incentivized to overbuild, and eliminate single-family zoning alone does not suffice to decrease the cost of land development. Particularly when considering mandatory parking requirements, Minneapolis, for instance, experiences limited development after eliminating single-family zoning, highlighting that the market's response to zoning changes may take time. Moreover, the success of this transition depends on addressing other restrictions, such as minimum lot sizes, setbacks, floor area ratios, which can hinder desired fill development. That's a great synopsis. She goes into even more in-depth knowledge on building zones. I think that's very smart. If we can go down to recommendation number 3, though, I really love the idea of putting more density of housing in or around transit. I think that's extremely smart because more and more people do not want to have to buy a car, do not want to have to fill it with gasoline every week, do not want to have the hassle of traffic and driving and stoplights and everything. A lot of people want to get an electric scooter, go to the subway and go to the bus station and get in an Uber and rock. I love that. And I think for the upcoming generation, it's not just going to be a life decision. It's probably going to be a financial necessity that we have higher density of affordable housing near transit hubs. Love these zoning ideas. We need to restructure zoning. It is a local problem at a national level, though, because municipalities, counties, cities, states all have their differing zoning laws. Like, for example, one of the, I'll put myself in the shoes of what she just said. She, at the end of that, said square footage ratio restrictions. Let me speak real to you, not realtor to you. Just came up with that. I believe that restriction right there is holding back so much. My property, I have to build, if I were to steamroll this home, if it lit on fire, went up in flames, we had to steamroll it all into the basement, fill it with dirt, start again. I think at that point, owning the land, understanding there are setback regulations. I can't build within so many feet of the road, or, I can't have my well sitting in my driveway. Like, there's certain restrictions that are just for freaking safety and to not have a dumb situation. Like, your septic needs to be a certain distance from here, and your fence line can only, a lot of it makes sense. But square footage ratios is a great example of restriction because I can't rebuild any home that I want to build. I can't go and build a container home. I can't go and build a dome home. I can't go and have somebody 3D print me a home. I also can't have a home that's under 1,600 square feet. If I were to build a new home here, I can't build a tiny home. Lord knows I couldn't build multiple on this property. I have to rezone it all together, restructure the whole property. There's so much restriction around how big the home has to be. And I think if you here listening to this are looking into the housing market or have or know somebody that is, just go on to Zillow, go on to Realtor.com. If you're in Delaware, go on to LoftTeamDE.com, the best Southern Delaware website to search homes in America. So wherever you go, you're going to see home prices are not only high, but the square footage is high. Whether it's new construction or resale, a lot of times these homes that are getting built, these boomers that are selling off what they do have, they're 4-bed, 5-bed, 2.5 bath, 3,000, 2,500 square foot type homes that aren't needed in this market. And that brings us back to our Canva, because we have a whole nother problem to solve. That's just one potential solution to one prominent problem. This housing emergency is clear and obvious, but we need to address it where the problems are: zoning, building, financing. We need to address the core problems at play in the housing market, and then create real-time, long-term, nonpartisan. This is a bipartisan issue, housing affordability. Shelter is a bipartisan problem. So let's go into our second potential solution, and it's affordable housing incentives. Bring me back up on screen. Let's talk about this. If you were to go to buy a home, what is holding you back? Just answer in your head or answer out loud. It may look weird. What's holding you back from buying a home right now? You may own a home. What's holding you back from selling and buying another? Maybe you're not planning to buy. What hypothetically, if you were to try to attack the buyer market, sell your home, buy another, buy your first, what's holding you back? Is it money? Was I right? Is it money? And it may be your savings account is low. It may be you have too much debt lined up per month. You can't even think about the opportunity or the potential opportunity of an HVAC blowing up and you having to pay $12,000 to fix it. You'd rather rent, rather live with Uncle Tom. Heard he's cool. And if we walk through all of these problems that are being faced by somebody walking in this market, a lot of it is centered around money. Your income is low. Okay, your wages aren't keeping up with standards. You probably know a lot of people that make a lot more than you potentially. And let me talk to somebody who does make a lot. You maybe make $120,000. Does it feel a lot more like middle class than you thought it was going to feel like? This is the problem we are going through. We are going through a wage crisis right now in America, with the median income still being in or around the mid-80s. The mid-80s, like $84,000. You know what that means? Whoa, I didn't even make that connection before we started. The median income in America, as last stated by the Census Bureau for the full complete year of 2023, was $80,000. We didn't get full data from 2024 yet. I do not know why, but most are thinking it's going to be in the mid-80s, 84, 85,000. But to be able to afford a starter home in America, according to the National Association of Realtors, it would cost you $106,000. You would need to make $106,000 to afford a starter home, but yet the median normal family in America makes 84. Even someone who's already bought. Holy cow. Everybody's priced out. It's a money problem. So we can't go and fix wages immediately. That is a billionaire issue. But what we can do is we can provide incentives. We can't just assume that the wealth gap is going to shrink because people want it to. We can't just assume billionaires are going to go say, you know what? I've made enough. Every dollar I make after this, I'm putting into a fund so that you can buy a house. No corporation is going to create a profit share with their company employees so that they can make enough to supplement the increased cost of living demand of this world, with 40% increases in insurance, 47% increases in median home sales, 80 and 90% increases in electric bills to keep the power on in that home. We don't have to talk about insurance, car payments, childcare, healthcare, all the cares. I care so damn much about our wage problem. People need to make more money. So if that's the big problem, how can we supplement it with affordable options, affordable incentives for a potential buyer? I would like us to see what Utah is doing, because I think there's no better way to determine future success than by looking at someone who's already tried something and is seeing good results. Before we bring up the article, we have a big problem in the home building sector, not just because of tariffs, not just because people can't afford to buy, but can I put you in another person's shoes? Imagine you're a home builder. Imagine your job. This is your job, okay? You build homes. You build neighborhoods, communities, okay? You're a land developer, all right? You're not inherently evil, okay? You're just a normal guy. This is your job. You've been doing it for years. You're a land developer. You build neighborhoods. Put yourself in that person's shoes, guy or girl's shoes. They have to not only seek the land that has the proper zoning for them to be able to build on. 75% is single family, so they'll probably be able to find it. Then they have to buy the land. land is getting more expensive. Then they have to submit plans to the county and city and get inspections done. They need to pay for those. These are called infrastructural fees. And 25% of the home that you are building as a home builder, about 25% of the cost of that entire home is going to go into infrastructure fees. So that's a big deal. Now you have to find labor. Labor's dwindling. We know a lot of people are being deported, and a lot of people being deported actually worked in a lot of these types of labor, specifically building of housing, contracting. At the same exact time people are demanding more money, there are less workers. There are less workers at a time where supplies are more expensive. Whether or not inflation continues to go on or tariffs actually end up happening, as we do know that they're currently being blocked. We don't know what's going to happen there. We're not going to speculate. What we can know for fact is inflation has gone up cumulatively, according to the Federal Reserve, about 40% since 2020. So even if we were to take that number and assume it is actually accurate and it's not lowering what it actually is, let's assume all of your costs are 40% higher. So every single shingle, every single piece of wood, every single piece of steel, everything that you need from the supplies for your workers to the supplies to build the home are more expensive. So if you're in the position of building a home, building a community, you're not exactly excited to go out and build right now because it's expensive. And on top of all of that, you have to finance. Even if you're a multimillionaire, can I tell you, it never makes sense to not finance. I work with people that buy homes. If you don't know anything about Delaware, we got some amazing beaches. And people will come down and say, like, I want to buy a home in or around the beaches. Maybe they want to spend $700,000. And they'll say, I want to buy it in cash. You hear that? Like a $700,000 home. Sean, isn't that like an insane amount of money to imagine just sitting in someone's account, just ready to rock? Mike said yes. The problem with buying a home in cash is you are limiting your capital. And most wealthy individuals know that the best thing to do when buying a home is to finance. Building a business is to finance. Doing anything is to finance. Why? Because the cost of financing the money is usually cheaper than what they could use that money for something else. I'll give you a perfect example. If they could be at a rental property and finance it at 3%, it may make sense. They're going to cash flow it, 3%, makes sense. But they could also walk into a world where they say, you know what? Rates right now are 6.5%. What if instead of paying this obnoxious rate, we take our capital and I'm doing a whole different example. I got off topic. Damn it, I did it again, Sean. I went off topic, my ADHD hit. If someone's buying a home in cash, the reason they're not going to want to do that is because if they were to pay, again, 3.5, 4.5, 7.5%, the higher it goes, the harder it gets. If they were to saying, okay, should I finance a 6.5% mortgage? Or should I just invest my money into the stock market and get a 7, 8% return? Right? Should I take my cash and put it into a home and know that cash is never going to make me any money? That cash is just going to sit in the house. Or should I just finance it, get the home, and take my other cash and then use it to invest? That's usually where I put people. That's usually what I say that people need to do. Because this person that was trying to buy a $700,000 home in cash only had about $1.2 million in the account. So if they had about $3 million, $5 million, like, whatever, do what you want with your cash. But at that point, you're really limiting your capital. You're over-leveraging your capital. In a scenario where rates are higher, in a scenario where people do not want to buy nearly as much, it is going to limit new construction purchases. And the affordability scenario right now is in the builder's hands. Most people know we need more supply. You know that. We need more affordable homes. But how do we actually get them to build affordable homes when they're in a pinch financially and they know the only person they could potentially sell to is that person with the big bank account? I personally think we should be doing what Utah is doing. So Utah, we can bring up this article, is a bill that passed in Utah 2023. We'll highlight the section I want you to read. It says qualified applicants can apply for this first-time homebuyer assistance program starting July 11, 2023. Funding will be made available to Utahns. Utahns? Wouldn't it be like Utahians or Utahns? I feel like there needs to be a vowel in there. That hurts. That hurts to say. Utahns. The Utahns on or after July 25th will help individuals and families receive a loan up to $20,000 and buy down interest rates, apply funds toward down payment, or pay closing costs. They're giving a interest-free lien to anybody that wants to buy a home, but there's a catch, and it's an important catch. In the fifth paragraph down, right there at the bottom, it says to qualify for the loan, Buyers must purchase a home no more than $450K that is either a new build or has never been lived in. Now, why is this important? We are creating a world where there's buyer demand for smaller construction. There's more demand being created by the Utahns. The Utahns can buy homes now because they can afford it, because we're going to give them $20K. We're going to say they can only buy a new build. So they're not going to buy Tom and Susie's house. They're not going to go buy an investment property. They're going to have to build a new home for them to buy. These builders will. Okay, so here's the second problem. Why would the builders do it if they can't afford it? So that's why in early 2024, they passed another bill. And this other bill incentivizes the builder. Our first bill incentivizes the buyer. Let's look at this other bill that addresses the builder. It's Bill 572 if you want to look it up. And what it's doing is, after nearly 6 months, they passed, since the U.S. governor, blah, 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 designed to make home ownership more accessible for first-time buyers. The bill sets aside, in the first paragraph there, Sean, right in the middle, the bill sets aside $300 million in state surplus funds that developers can use to reduce the cost of entry-level homes. One paragraph down, after listening to local developer Jed Nielsen, he said the county commission approved an additional 275 units. There was an original development agreement for 275 units. Explain. So they get the 275 units, but all the single-family detached homes will sell for under $400K. Now, Utah, if you're curious, their median home sales about $550,000. So for them, $400 to $450K is their first-time market. In a normal market, that would be closer to $300 to $355K. So if we're looking at a world where builders could actually get supplemented, be given money to buy or build homes that first-time home buyers actually can afford to buy, you may actually incentivize the builder to build it. And now you have a buyer with the money that's able to buy it. They're qualified. Utahns, they're ready to go. And when you build the Utahns a home, the builder needs to have some type of financial incentivization to build it. And what they've done specifically is, again, they set aside $300 million. And what they're doing with it is they're not just giving it out to builders and saying, hey, if you build this, we're just going to give you all this money. What they're doing is they're saying, if your home is going to be under this amount when it's finished, this price point when it's finished, we're going to allow you to take 10% of all of your expenses to build it and reduce it. You're going to be able to supplement that from this fund. So automatically, you grow the profit margin for the builder. The ability for the builder to build smaller is now more possible. It's more plausible. And in the Utahns case, there's more, expensive homes out there. Affordable is about $400 to $450K, and you're prepping those buyers. It's been going on for a couple years, and it's working. Slowly but surely, it is working. So why can't we do this at a national level? Why can't we incentivize builders to build affordable homes? Why can't we incentivize our first-time buyers with funds set up to help them supplement their closing costs, set up to supplement their down payment, set up to pay down their rate so they're not paying a $3,000 mortgage? You cannot look me in the eye and say that is normal. You cannot say that a $2,600 starter home mortgage, according to the National Association of Realtors, is normal. This is what we're living in. That's why we have a national emergency in housing right now, and I'm thankful it's being addressed. But damn, can we address the problems? We have an affordable housing crisis. We have a crisis of the Gen Z and younger generations not being able to look the housing market even in the eye, lest consider even getting pre-approved. We also simultaneously have 7.2 million active pre-approvals in the market today, and yet no one's buying. Why? Homes are too expensive. We need to build more affordable homes and empower the first-time home buyer. This could be via a rate that's slightly lower, or this could come straight from the investor. Let's bring back to our Canva, though, to address how maybe we could supplement that. Again, going back to our three problems, our three beautiful flags. So you just changed the chat box. Sleepy Biden's making me look bad. Zoning, building, and financing are our three biggest problems in this market. Donald Trump and Scott Bessent have said we are going to go into a national housing emergency. We do not know what that is going to entail. Bessent kind of said that it's going to have to do with zoning and kind of going to have to do with making it cheaper for builders to be able to afford to build through things like infrastructure and restrictions from regulatory costs. But ultimately, I believe this is a multi-layered problem. We need to allow the right types of homes to be built. We need to restructure zoning laws. We then need to not only incentivize the builder to build, but provide incentives for the buyer to buy their first home at an affordable way, an affordable level, I should say. So what could be our third big problem solution? Financing right now is abominable. You go to a mortgage officer and they're going to require you to have anywhere from $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 in reserves. You're going to have to make at least $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month to have enough debt to income ratio to be able to support the mortgage. And then you're going to get a pre-approval for a mortgage payment you don't even want to touch. So a lot of people aren't even walking into the door of buying a home right now. And a lot of it has to do with billionaires and investors. Yeah, we love the elites here, man. They're one of the biggest problems. Why? 1 out of 4 homes gets bought by an investor. So let's look at one of our potential solutions, a investor ladder and a 2% sub rate. 2 different solutions, big problem. 2 different solutions, big problem. So I want to propose a investor ladder. Now, I've talked about ladders in the past. I think that the current generation looking to buy a home has a ladder. And I think the ladder is about 6 feet tall. And I think if you were to go back to 1970, 1980, 1993, one of the most affordable housing years of all time, 2006 even, the wall that they were climbing over with that 6-foot ladder to get into the American dream was about, let's say 5, maybe in the 90s it gets to about 6, and maybe before 2000 it's like a 7.5-foot wall. But the 6-foot ladder is going to get you over that, right? The 6-foot ladder is going to get you over that. And maybe the 6-foot ladder is a series of rungs of proper investing, all right? Saving a little bit, all right? Getting your credit over 640, saving $5,000 into your bank account. Maybe it's getting a promotion at your job, or your wife saying, hey, maybe I got to pick up something part-time. There was a path. There was rungs that could be followed to get over the wall. I think today's generation has that same 6-foot wall that their boomer friend or boomer dad's friend gave them, or their dad's advice, or their uncle's advice, or their older sister's advice, or their older millennials' advice. They're handing them a 6-foot ladder, and the wall today is 30 feet tall. So that's why I think the real problem is we have past advice just doesn't work today. We need to restructure a new system. And that's where I think the investor ladder comes in. Let's get them on a ladder. The investor ladder would work a lot like tax brackets. Think of a tax bracket, and if you don't know how a tax bracket works, the more you make, it changes your income. So your income changes, your tax changes. You have a top marginal rate, and then you also have the total rate. Now, the total rate is going to vary, again, based off how much you make, and that's fair. If you make more, you should have to pay more into the system, and I think a lot of people would advocate for taxing the wealth at a higher rate. Pre-50s, we had a 90% top marginal tax rate for people that made the top level of money at the time. A lot of people avoided it via tax breaks and things of that nature. But again, we need to look at the system, not just the current problems and little Band-Aids we can put on it. We need to restructure the system. And an investor ladder would take a person that is looking to purchase a property with plans to profit, say that 3 times fast, purchasing a property with plans to profit, they will pay a fee at the closing table. Listen, if they take a home, they need to make a home. If they take a home off the housing market and they plan to make money on it, it's not inherently evil. We can have different opinions on that. Maybe you think it's evil. That's fine. Whatever. I don't like billionaires. I don't like capitalism at its core. I think our free market capitalism is beautiful, but post-2008, we haven't been in that. So that's a whole different discussion. The problem is investors are indeed buying the properties. They're buying them with plans to profit. They're not going to live there. They're going to rent it out long term. They're going to Airbnb it. They're going to flip it. They're going to turn it into some type of multifamily something. They're going to cash flow. Then they're going to take the money they make on the cash flow, cover the mortgage on it, and they're going to slowly build up capital again so they can do it again. Then they're going to have 2 properties. And then those 2 properties are going to finance the next 2 properties they're going to get, and then they're going to have 4. And within 5 years, they're going to be set up and ready to get a pre-approval from a bank that's ready because of all of the assets they have behind them and the money they have in their equity to buy 6 more. It's a really simple system. It's not difficult to get into the market of rentals, and that's the problem. Investors need to pay their fair share when they're buying property with plans to profit. So if they take a home, they need to pay a fee. The fee would go up based off the amount of properties they own. Now, I think we should have a cap, 10, maybe 50 at max, that any one individual can own, and I don't believe corporations or businesses anyway should own any properties. But that's neither here nor there. If we had a ladder that scaled up all the way to the institutional Blackstones of the world buying properties to say, if you are buying properties you are planning to profit on, you're going to pay a fee, 2%, 3%, as high as 6% on the purchase price of the property at closing. Not on your monthly, keep your money, keep your cash flow. That's fine, whatever. But you're going to pay this fee up front. Now, you may not know our veterans pay a fee at the closing table. Did you know that? Our veterans, if they went and served overseas, came back home, had their VA loan, their post 9/11 GI bills stacked up, they had their active years, maybe they retired, whatever they did. Thank you for your service, by the way. I got to use my VA loan as well. And what I'm telling you right now is if I were to go and buy a home with a VA loan, I have to pay a fee at the closing table, similar to what I'm proposing for the investor. I have to pay a fee to utilize my VA loan. Now, my VA loan doesn't have a down payment, and I don't have PMI, so it's a pretty good trade-off. But at the end of the day, our veterans do have to pay this fee, and it goes up the next time you buy a home with the VA loan. So my proposal is we institute that same structure, that same system to investors. And that fee for taking a home will go toward making a home. And we'll take that money, looping it back into solution number 2, by the way, with first-time homebuyer incentives. We have a state-run first-time homebuyer fund that only supports people looking to buy down their closing costs, buy down their down payment, or buy down their interest rate with supplemented money to be able to afford the market. And how do we get the money? We get it from investors. The investor buys a home. They pay the fee. The fee goes into the first-time homebuyer fund. It sits there. When someone qualifies for the fund, they get to utilize a certain percentage of the purchase price of the home they're looking to buy and use that money's fund or that fund's money. It's not that complex. It's not that difficult. And I'm not the smartest person in the room, so I know it's been thought about. We need to some way, shape, or form limit access to investors wanting to buy. And yes, a fee would turn some investors off from even looking to buy. Good, because 27% of all homes in America are purchased by investors in 2025. That number's been growing for years. We need to stop it. And the other way we can stop it is by also helping the financing side, the actual mortgage payment side of the loan. Because see, if rates were to drop, you may be in the corner of people who are like, Jerome's too late. He's too late, Powell. The Fed rate should have been cut eons ago. He's too late. Mortgages are too high. Car interest is too high. Credit card interest is too high. It's all too high. We need to cut it. We should have cut it a long time ago. 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, pick a point, get it down. If you're of that belief, not saying you're wrong, by the way, if you're of that belief, you may believe that mortgage rates need to come down immediately. And you may be thinking that because you yourself want to either refinance, buy a new home, maybe even buy an investment property. I don't know. But one thing I do know is that when you actually go to, say, buy a new property, if you've already owned a home, you're going to pay that new mortgage rate, whether it's lower or higher, as a first-time buyer would. Hear me. A first-time home buyer, if rates were to go down, if you're listening to this, hear me. If mortgage rates drop for you, they drop for everybody. Imagine you're in a coliseum. You're sitting in your dungeon room, and you've been entrapped. You've been captured by the government. You've been captured, and you're in the coliseum. Why? Because you are in a battle. You've been forced to fight, and you're going to live here at this coliseum, and you're going to fight. As long as you fight, you get to stay until you die. That's fine, whatever. You're just a casualty. But if you win one of these fights, guess what? You get to leave. If you win one of the fights, one of the coliseum fights, you get to leave. That's the play. And so we do this for our own entertainment in the coliseum. But think about it this way. Think about you're sitting in this room. You've lost 28 straight. You're not dead, so that's good. But you're a little beat up. You don't like this. You think you're downtrodden. You're like, well, I just can't do this. It's hard. It doesn't seem fair. Everyone else out there has like so much experience and bigger and stronger, and they have families. I just don't know what to do. You get a knock on the door. Oh, that was a stupid door. That was like a horse moving through, like patting through the pasture. Dunk, dunk, dunk. That's better. Hey, open up. And then the door opens up. And he's got this sword for you. He walks in. It's a beautiful sword. It glimmers in the sun as he walks in. Then it hits the shadow, kind of goes away. You're looking at it, and your eyes just, do I get to use this in the next fight? And he's like, yeah, you do. You're going to get out of here. And you're like, oh, my God, this is incredible. I'm going to go Samurai Jack on all these folk with my new low mortgage rate. Wink, wink. My new sword, and I'm going to go fight and win. Heck yeah. All I needed was this sword. All I needed were lower mortgage rates. And then you hear, dunk, dunk, dunk. One door down. And you hear the same conversation happen. You're like, wait, he gets a sword too? And then you look out of your cell and you realize all around the Coliseum, everybody's getting the same sword. Everybody's getting the new low mortgage rate. The person that already owns, the investor, the corporation, all get it. So I propose that there's a 2% sub rate. This was actually an idea perpetuated by RFK Jr. about a year and a half ago. I really liked it. He hasn't done anything with it, go figure. But offering a 2% sub rate to anybody who hasn't owned real estate. If you've never owned a home before and you were to go into this battle, of course, you need some form of leverage. You need some form of weaponry to be able to get through the Coliseum of the housing market. And if you want to get through it, you have to have a weapon that is superior to get you in on the game. And I see a world where we need to have, if rates are 6.5%, that a first-time buyer can get 4.5%. That if rates get down to 5.25, that a first-time buyer can get a 3.25. I firmly believe this at my core. And if you, who own real estate, don't believe that, how dare you? By the way. I don't think you're that person. If you own real estate, if you think that first-time buyers shouldn't get a lower rate than other people and you think that's communism, like how dare you, honestly? You went through the cheapest money period in literal American history. From 2013 to 2018, the most affordable money that could possibly be financed, only with a quick blip on the radar until we drop it down to zero for the lowest Fed rate of all time, recent history, for all types of financing, housing, cars, boats, vacations. What you want to finance a burrito now, you can do it. And if you had low rates, it wasn't that bad. Maybe you got an $1,100 mortgage, $1,200, $1,600 mortgage. But let me challenge you. Could you buy your home again today? If you had to requalify for its active sitting value, $400,000 when you bought it for $220, $180, $130. I bought my first house for $160. That same house is sitting out there in Dover right now. It's worth $420. Everyone has it. If you already own, you are winning. How dare you sit here and say, well, I shouldn't get low rates. I didn't get yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Oh, it's a free market capitalist. No, it's not. The Fed's been holding residential mortgage-backed securities for decades now, and it's been buying up bonds to suppress the interest rate market. No, we don't live in this free market. This isn't just a cycle. This isn't just something that's going to get passed down and eventually, okay, it's going to settle down. Gen Z is going to get their opportunity. Gen Alpha eventually will get their opportunity. No, we're walking down a path of emergency. We are in a housing crisis. We are in an affordability crisis, and we're not addressing the real problems, the core problems. Now, I am speculating a little because there hasn't been a definition put on what housing emergency really means. We haven't gotten that yet. But what we've gotten in kind of whispers is that it's only going to focus on this much of the problem. This much of the problem. We're a basketball team that's losing, and we're like, we need some better players. We need a coach. We need a practice facility. And they're like, we got you new shoes. You better love those shoes. Those are better than anything your dad had. I'll tell you that. You have a better chance than they ain't gonna win with new shoes. They need players. They need coaching. They need practice. They need to learn the system. They need to get an opportunity. They need to get weaponry in the Coliseum. And right now, there's nothing that's setting up for that to happen. There's nothing setting up for that to happen. And I don't want to be gleamy doomsday here, but if you think the housing market is just going to immediately start dropping in price down to where you want them to be, from where a 400K home is now 280K, it isn't happening without an entire economic seismic collapse. 40% of homes in America don't even have a mortgage, by the way. How would you get those people in a financial situation where they had to sell their home like 2008 happened with adjustable rates? How can you get the boomer and the corporation to sell off all their rental properties? How do you do that? You can't even get the person who bought their first home last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago to sell because they have such a low payment that they got in 2021, and now they're stuck. Even that inventory is not hitting. Builders aren't building. So if resellers aren't selling us at a high pace and builders aren't building at as high a pace, when are we going to get the inventory? If we're not creating any legislation, we're not putting any bills out there at a national level like Utah is doing to incentivize builders and to prepare buyers, how are we going to solve that problem? And if we don't look at zoning, if we don't look at how we actually cut up our country, county, and cities to mark what should be where for the modern day, like post-civil rights, modern day America, we need to have these conversations. We need to address the real problems in the room. And we can bring back up the Canva to remind everybody of our 3 problems, 3 solutions, and bring back our friend here. I am. What can I say? I'm not. I'm as blue-blooded as a capitalist as you could meet, honestly. And in all realms, I kind of veer on the conservative side. But where we're at right now sucks, and nothing this administration's doing is helping. And if they want to yell communism, fuck them. Like, I couldn't care less. Zoning, building, financing. I shouldn't have cursed. Let me hold my Bible real quick. Sorry, Lord. We'll pray this one out to make up for it. Zoning, building, financing. Those are the problems we are facing. Restructuring those zoning laws, building affordable housing incentives, and creating an investor ladder or a 2% subrate for first-time buyers isn't communist, Mr. President. It is what our market needs. It is what our first-time home buyers are demanding, and we need to be louder about this. We need to be louder about this because we are walking into doomsday scenarios where the median first-time buyer is at 38 years old now. This is not normal. The median income compared to the income needed to buy a home being 39 grand apart is not normal. None of this is normal. It needs to be stopped being perpetuated as normal, and we need to stop glazing over a little icing on this shitty cake we have. Oh, we're gonna, national housing emergency. We're gonna do this. That headline will make people think we're doing something. Set up a committee. Get people in there. Get economists in the door. Bring the BLS people over. I don't understand why the problem's not being addressed. I really don't. And I was in D.C. yesterday for a completely separate problem and issue, one that we've touched on and will continue to not shut up about on the show with Jeffrey Epstein. 10 of his unheard from victims spoke on Capitol Hill and told their stories. 7 of them have never been public about what happened. And it was emotional hearing how they felt trapped, scared. Like the 2 people who came out and named names before got offed. They got offed. Okay, they're no longer here with us. And these people, what I found out yesterday is a lot of them felt like they were the only one. A lot of them felt the shame and see the political circus. And so many of them have come to police and federal bureaus and others saying, here's what happened to me. How can I do something about it? Representatives, congressmen, nothing's been done. They named names. Nothing's been done. And what did our president do after that presser happened on the Capitol front lawn? 10 victims with Ro Khanna, Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that was a weird one, all out there. What did he say when asked about it? He said it's a hoax. Stop worrying about it. They're trying to distract you from the winning. I've settled 7 wars. Our debt is getting taken care of by tariffs. I'm the man. There's no sympathy. There's just no empathy. I'm not red, I'm not blue, but I do believe that I am a Christian, the Jesus kind. And the Jesus kind says a lack of empathy is the root of evil, to be honest. The ability to not love your neighbor as yourself is the core of Christianity. It's the number 1 commandment that holds all the commandments within it. So when someone's not treating their neighbor as equally as they, I think that's a pretty good sign that there's issues at the core of it. And I think that bleeds into housing. I think it bleeds into a lot of problems. And I personally believe a lot of those problems aren't being addressed at their core. Housing being no abject from that. So one quick anecdote before we finish off. Oh, I had an anecdote and it left me. Give me a second. I'm going to remember it. I'm going to remember my anecdote. I had an anecdote. I don't even know how to spell anecdote. I'm going to keep saying, dang it. I forgot what I was going to say. I suppose we have to end there then, if that's the case. Oh! I remembered my anecdote. There's a CEO. I know, boo CEOs, but you might like this one at the end. He ran this is an old story, tech firm in New York, and they were expanding, and I read his book. It's a very good book. It was more biography style, but at the time I was very, very just, capitalist world, make money, business. So I just read, listen, learned as much as I could. And this guy, he was hiring a lot, and I was going through a period where I was hiring, and so I was listening to kind of his strategy and what he was doing, and he had this little thing that he did that no one else was doing. And we're going to wrap up here. The thing that he would do is when they would pass the interview and then pass the second interview and were prepped for being hired, they were good to go, he would take them out for breakfast. He would take them out to breakfast, and he would go to this diner. The diner would always be the same spot. He would go to the same diner. He would sit at the same table, and specifically, he would have the same server. Now, one day he talks about he went out to breakfast with this new potential hire. He wants to learn about them. He wants to know about their family. He wants to know why they want to work there. What's their future ambition? How can he support them? Seemed like a good leader. And he said that when the waitress had come over with our orders, there was a mess up on his. He received the complete wrong plate. None of it was his food. It was like probably for the wrong table or something. And he said he was very interested to see how this person would react. And they reacted poorly. They were passive aggressive, he said, toward them, and kind of belittling toward the waitress. And he took that as, this person does not need to work at our company because this person does not value others as himself. He does not put his neighbor at the same level as him. Maybe because of making more money, maybe because he's a man. I don't know. I'm speculating. But what I didn't tell you is he does this every single time. He goes to the same diner. He sits in the same seat at the same table with the same waitress who's told to mess it up every single time. To know whether or not there is empathy at the core of his new hire. And I think that's pretty special, honestly, because I think at the core of it, empathy leads to all things good, integrity, loyalty, some type of duty to service, some type of actual want to grow something, be something, make a change, or at least perpetuate something good. So I leave you with this. Our housing market is indeed in an emergency state. It has been in an emergency state, and frankly, the red lights have been going off for a while. What's going to happen from this exact moment in time where a national housing emergency is going to be enacted, I could not tell you at this exact moment what it is going to entail. I can promise you, though, that if you follow along with the channel and you follow along with my socials, you'll be the first person to know once I know. And I keep tabs on all of it. So if you're interested in that, follow along, because it will be something. Whether it's a nothing burger that doesn't result in anything is what we really want to know, though. So for that, let me pray you out. Dear Lord, thank you for this time that we have together today. Thank you for the technology allowing for us to even be able to communicate wherever we are today. And I just pray peace. I pray tranquility onto anybody that's within the sound of my voice. Nobody has to think some magical being is going to come down from you, Lord, and bless them and make them feel amazing. It's a step-by-step process, but I pray for just a little bit of peace. I pray for just a little bit of less anxiety. I pray for a little bit of forethought into the future without stress. I truly feel and yearn for the younger generation to have a better opportunity at this market, at this life, and at this dream here in America. I do love this country. You know I love this country, Lord, and I pray that everybody within the sound of my voice would make change for themselves individually so that we can macro make change. You want to see change, Lord. You know that we are surrounded by evil. This is spiritual warfare that we are amidst. And I pray that the warriors listening to this right now, in one way, shape, or form, whether they see you as their Lord or not, would see empathy as the number one source of their strength, would love their neighbors as themselves, and would not be stuck in a perpetual state of cynicism or any form of negativity toward their current scenario, because you have better plans for them. I pray this all in your heavenly precious name. Grateful for this day and grateful for everyone listening. Amen. That's today's show. Thank you for showing up. Maybe next episode I won't have the emergency hat on, but who knows? See you next time.